Shout out to the homeboy Mike over on Twitter. He shared this here. He shared this here late last night, and I want to share this here with you guys. He stated, whoa, if this is true, these are the league top dogs. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, all had their agents send letters to.
The list of names involved in this suddenly makes the WNBA CBA negotiations feel very different. Caitlin Clark's agent, Angel Reese's agent, Paige Bucher's agent, Brianna Stewart's agent, representatives tied to some of the biggest stars in women's basketball have now sent formal letters to the WNBA Players Association. And that move could shift the entire conversation at a critical moment. With the March 10th deadline approaching fast, a new layer of pressure has entered the picture. This is no longer just a standoff between the league and the union. Now the agents, the people directly responsible for protecting the earning power of top players, are demanding more transparency about what is happening behind closed doors. That raises an important question. What exactly do they believe is not being made clear? And why do they feel the need to step in right now? At the center of this dispute is a massive financial divide. The league's proposal would give players 70% of net revenue, meaning the split happens only after expenses are deducted. That includes operating costs, travel, arena rentals, marketing, and everything else the league counts before profits are calculated. The union, however, wants 27.5% of gross revenue.
The revenue sharing system remains first and foremost the most important matter right now. The league is proposing a system where the players would receive about 70% of net revenue. That's revenue after deducting expenses, versus the players are asking for a system where they'd get about 27.5.
See, that's the whole deal here. Just like I keep telling y'all, this revenue sharing is simply because of the old players. The old players, for whatever reason, they want to make sure that they be able to get some type of revenue sharing, but I just don't think the owners are going to.
Meaning players would get their share before those expenses come out. That difference is not just technical language. It completely changes the size of the money on the table. Under the players' model, the year one salary cap would be about $9.5 million per team. Under the league's model, it would be closer to $5.65 million. That is nearly a $4 million gap per franchise. Across 15 teams, that puts roughly $60 million in player compensation at stake. At that level, it is easy to understand why agents are stepping in now. Their clients' futures are tied to these numbers.
I think they're doing too much, and I think they are the ones holding up the process.
Gross revenue, that's revenue before deducting expenses. So you have a different system, you have a different percentage, and the best way I could probably illustrate the difference is if you look at the salary cap under year one of the proposals that both sides are proposing. For the players, they would say the year one salary cap would be around $9.5 million, and for the...
And so are their commissions. One of the most overlooked issues in these negotiations may end up being one of the most important: housing. On the surface, it sounds like a small benefit compared to salary caps and revenue splits. In reality, it could have a major effect on how players experience the next CBA, especially those who are not already making major money off the court. If teams reduce or remove housing support, that cost does not just disappear. It shifts directly onto the players. For the biggest stars, that may be inconvenient, but manageable. A player with major endorsement income can absorb rent, relocation, and living expenses without it changing much. For younger players, minimum salary players, and those trying to secure a roster spot, that same change could hit much harder. That is where the tension becomes more complicated than people realize.
Big difference to bridge there. You also have the league and the union disagreeing on whether the union's proposal would result in significant losses for the league. The second most important issue is to figure out housing, because teams have historically provided it for players. We've seen a lot of movement on that front and these proposals that have been exchanged over the past few weeks after a stalemate really to begin 2026. And it's my understanding that the players and the league are also meeting. They met earlier today, I should say, and we'll see what movement comes from there. But as you just illustrated, 74 days.
Not every player enters these negotiations from the same financial position. The stars generating headlines and endorsement deals are living in a completely different economic reality than the back-end roster players trying to stay in the league. So when agents step in, They are not all protecting the same priorities. Some are focused on maximizing top-end earning power. Others may be more concerned with preserving basic financial stability for players lower on the pay scale. That is why the recent agent involvement stands out. This was not just a random comment from outside observers. These were representatives tied to some of the most recognizable names in women's basketball asking for more visibility into where negotiations actually stand. That tells you there is concern, not just about the final numbers, but about the process itself. And that concern makes sense. Agents are the people who will eventually have to guide players through whatever system comes next. They need clarity on salary structure, team-building rules, and what benefits may change, because those details shape every contract decision that follows.
We all know Erin Kane was reported to being Caitlin Clark's agent. I don't believe she still is. I believe Caitlin Clark is still under the same agency, but let's dive into the story, figure out how we got here, head on over to X, because Alexa Philippou released this story last night. Now, we did cover this. If you guys did not see the video that I did late last night, highly recommend you guys go look at it. If not, we just finna talk.
With the draft approaching, expansion teams preparing to enter the league, and the season getting closer, uncertainty is no longer a minor inconvenience. It is becoming a serious problem. This is where the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. The league cannot keep major business moving forward while the financial rules are still unsettled. Expansion plans, free agency decisions, roster construction, and contract strategy all depend on one basic question: what will the new system actually look like? Until that answer is in place, the league is trying to plan the future without knowing the framework it will be operating under. And that delay creates consequences that grow larger by the day. Every missed deadline adds more uncertainty for teams, players, agents, and front offices trying to prepare for a new season that is supposed to begin soon. There's also a deeper tension sitting underneath all of this. Many of the players pushing hardest for a stronger revenue model are veterans who understand that this current moment may be their best chance to benefit from the league's sudden rise in visibility. They spent years building the league, often without the salaries, exposure, or commercial rewards that match their talent.
At ESPN, Alexa Philippou with details on WNBA agents' call for more transparency and communication from the players' union. Behind the scenes, agents have been talking about the issues for months. So I haven't heard anything about agents saying anything in regards to the current CBA negotiation situation. Now, Alexa Philippou did do an interview with ESPN yesterday, but before we get into that video, I want to show you guys the group of agents that has sent out information pretty much letting us know exactly which.
Now that the spotlight is bigger and the money is finally increasing, they do not want to watch the system grow without securing a larger share for themselves. That position is understandable, but it also comes with risk. If negotiations drag too far or collapse into a labor standoff, the league could lose some of the momentum it just worked so hard to gain. The surge in attention from 2024 brought in a wider audience, including casual viewers who were not longtime WNBA followers. Those fans came in because the product felt exciting, new, and impossible to ignore. A prolonged dispute could interrupt that momentum at the worst possible time. From ownership's side, the caution is easy to understand too. For years, investors stayed committed while the league operated without consistent profitability. Now that meaningful growth is finally showing up, they are hesitant to lock themselves into a structure that could become difficult to sustain if revenues cool off. That is what makes this so complicated. Both sides see opportunity, but both sides are trying to protect themselves from different fears. The hardest part of this entire standoff is that neither side can be dismissed as unreasonable.
Listen to this real quick, and let's dive into this story, man. So I couldn't find the whole interview, but let's listen to this segment right here, guys.
truly an inflection point in this league as they try to get this thing hammered out, though. I do want to go to the calendar of some of the things to look at over the next coming months in the WNBA offseason. The Women's Final Four wraps up in Cleveland on April 5th. The WNBA draft is April 13th, and the regular season begins on May 8th. And there's 2 expansion franchises debuting this year in Toronto and Portland. So that's kind of a look ahead to the season beginning. Alexa, what still needs to be hammered out by the 2 sides before then?
The players have spent years carrying the league through an era when the money did not match the talent, the visibility, or the sacrifice. Many of them accepted lower salaries, played overseas to make up the difference, lived through inconsistent travel standards, and gave the league the credibility it needed to survive long enough to reach this moment. From their point of view, now that the business is finally growing, waiting even longer for meaningful change feels like another demand for patience after decades of it. Ownership sees it differently. Investors stayed in place through years of losses, believing the league would eventually grow into something stronger. Now that growth is finally visible, they want proof that it can last before committing to a system that dramatically raises costs. That caution may frustrate players, but from a business standpoint, it is not difficult to understand. What makes this even more complicated is the role of agents. They are not neutral observers in this process. Their job is to protect their clients and maximize earnings, and the final salary structure will directly shape the value of every contract they negotiate. A larger cap means more money flowing through the system, which naturally increases the value of the deals they help secure. That does not make their concerns invalid, but it does explain why they want a clearer seat at the table as the deadline approaches. Then there is the issue that could hit the league's lower-paid players the hardest: housing. If team-provided housing is reduced or eliminated, that cost shifts directly onto athletes whose salaries already leave very little room for error. A star can absorb that. A rookie or fringe player may not be able to. That is where a single policy change can widen the gap inside the same locker room. And all of this is unfolding at the worst possible time.
Now, the dates was released last night in this article right here that she did, how they ran out a plan of action for the WNBA draft, for the WNBA lottery. But at the end of the day, the deadline is March the 10th. No matter what they put out, no matter what they say, they have to get this deal done by March the 10th. Ain't no ifs, ands, ain't no buts. No matter how bad they feel as if they owed some money, due some money, at the end of the day, if they do not get this deal done.
The league is coming off its strongest season yet, with rising ratings, stronger attendance, and a level of mainstream attention it had been chasing for years. But momentum in sports is fragile. If uncertainty drags on much longer, the league risks turning a breakthrough moment into a stalled opportunity. What makes this standoff so difficult to watch is that, on paper, this should be the moment when a deal comes together. The players have more leverage than at any point in league history because the audience is finally larger, the attention is real, and the business has clear momentum behind it. At the same time, ownership has more reason than ever to push forward aggressively because the last season showed that growth is no longer just theoretical. The demand is there, the interest is there, the opportunity is there. That is why the current tension feels so risky. Instead of building on that momentum with unity, both sides are still locked in a fight over financial structure, benefits, and who gets to control the terms of the next phase of growth. The involvement of agents adds an important clue about what may be happening behind the scenes. When representatives for major players begin formally pushing for more visibility into the process, it usually means they do not feel informed enough to guide their clients properly. That points to a communication problem at a very sensitive stage. Agents are the ones who eventually have to help players make contract decisions, evaluate timing, and weigh trade-offs. If they feel shut out while the deadline approaches, that suggests the negotiation process may be too insulated for its own good. That matters because the financial gap still appears very wide. When the two sides are working from models that produce drastically different outcomes, compromise becomes more difficult and more urgent at the same time. It is not just about who wins the argument, it is about whether the league can avoid damaging the momentum it just fought to create. That is the real question hanging over all of this. Is the difference between these proposals worth risking the progress that made last season feel like a turning point? A prolonged dispute would not just hurt executives and players. It would affect fans, sponsors, team planning, and the broader trust that this league is finally ready to grow without interruption.
The agents is putting in letters is because they getting money off this too. The agents get a piece of all these players' contracts and money like that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the pros, well, at least in the NFL, that's how it is. It's 2 to 3% of net revenue of their contracts. I don't know what it is in the W, but the fact of the matter is they need a plan of action to make sure they meet this deadline, man, because it's looking like they might not finna meet it. And just like I stated before, I don't believe Erin Kane is Caitlin Clark's agent. Now, she's still up under the same umbrella of, I believe the company was bought by Saks Fifth, but I don't know. I'm gonna look more into that.
At some point, someone has to choose progress over pride. The next stretch of negotiations will reveal whether either side is ready to do that. And in the end, that is what makes this moment so important. This is not just another labor negotiation, and it is not just a fight over percentages on a spreadsheet. This is a test of whether the WNBA can protect the momentum it finally earned without tearing itself apart, just as the spotlight grows brighter. The players are right to want more. They helped build this league through years when the sacrifices were larger than the rewards. They carried the product, elevated the standard, and stayed committed long enough to see the audience finally catch up to the talent. Ownership is also right to think about long-term stability. A breakthrough season means very little if the business model collapses under pressure before that growth has a chance to mature. That is why this next stretch matters so much. The danger is not simply that one side gets less than it wanted. The real danger is that both sides hold their ground so stubbornly that they damage the very future they are both trying to claim. Momentum is fragile. Attention is fragile. Casual fans do not wait forever. And once a sports league loses the public at a key moment, getting that audience back is far harder than keeping it. So the real question is no longer who has the better argument. The real question is who understands the stakes clearly enough to compromise before the damage becomes permanent. Because if this drags too far, everyone pays for it. The stars, the role players, the owners, the sponsors, the expansion teams, and the fans who just started believing this league was entering a new era. The next few days will say a lot about where the WNBA is really headed. Not just financially, but structurally, culturally, and publicly. And if you have been watching this whole situation unfold, stay locked in with Courtside Leaks, because this story is not just about a deal, it is about the future of the league itself. We've got every angle covered. Every leak, every backstage twist, every moment they won't show you. Hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video. Stay locked in with Courtside Leaks, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.